Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're going to do another Who is Better. Basically, we're going to take some wrestlers, compare them in 8 different categories, see which of the wrestlers is the best of them. For this one, as you may tell by the thumbnail, we picked The Shield, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and I'm probably going to call Dean Ambrose Jon Moxley through this whole thing because that's what's fresh on my mind. I may interchange them, so forgive me if I call him that. I'll probably just call him Moxley the whole time. But anyway, if you've seen the other videos I've done on this, I have 8 different categories. Each category I'm going to rate on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being worst, 5 being best, and at the end I'm going to total up all of their points into one big total, and whoever has the most total points will be the one determined to be the best. We're going to start off with our first category, technical wrestling. Basically, this is your submissions, suplexes, stuff of that nature. First up, Seth Rollins. I'm giving Seth a 5. There are very few people that are as technically sound, as good in between the ropes as Seth Rollins. That's why he's here. And he's been that way his whole entire run since he debuted with The Shield. And even before that, if we're being honest. Next up, Roman Reigns. I like Roman a lot. This may be his weak spot in his in-ring talent. I'm giving Roman a 3. He's more of a brawler. He's more of someone that you would think of like how The Undertaker would wrestle or John Cena would wrestle. Not saying that his matches are bad. He's just not on the level of a Seth Rollins. And, 3 is probably right about average or just above average, so we're going to give Roman a 3. Next up on the technical ability, Jon Moxley. Again, copy and paste most of what I said with Roman. I'm going to give Moxley a 3. I think he's a much better brawler than he is a technical wrestler. Again, he's not bad at it, but you don't watch a Jon Moxley match to see awesome chain wrestling. You watch a Jon Moxley match because you're going to see him bleed, you're going to see chairs, you're going to see punches, you're going to see baseball bats, all that fun stuff. So Jon gets a 3. Next up, striking. First off, we're going to start with Seth Rollins. Seth is going to get a 4 here. He is really good at striking as well. The thing that probably helps him the most is the stomp. I think it's a fantastic looking finisher. I can't see any holes in it. I can't understand how he doesn't hurt the other wrestler, which is a great example of why he's so good. That's why he gets such a high mark. Next up, Roman Reigns. Roman's getting a 5. I just mentioned it. His brawling is top notch. The way he puts together his matches around that, he gets a 5. And much again, like I said with Roman, Jon Moxley, he's going to get a 5 as well. And these guys are what you think of when you think of a striker. Moxley going out there forearming, chopping, all that fun stuff. I enjoy him as a striker. Next category, how they perform as a heel. Now this is at the times they've been heel. I'm going to go with Seth Rollins first. Seth Rollins is going to get a 4. I think he's a really good heel. I think he's highly entertaining. He does tend to get a little bit annoying at times, and not in a good way, which gives him a little bit of a knockdown, but I do think he's fantastic at it. Next up, Roman Reigns. I'm giving Roman a 5. His tribal chief role is one of the great character developments in the history of wrestling. The Bloodline story is, in my opinion, already a top 5 wrestling story of all time. I'll put it right up there with the Mega Powers. I'll put it up there with Sting versus the NWO, Raven vs. Dreamer, Dusty Rhodes vs. Kevin Sullivan. Any wrestling story you want to give, I will put the Bloodline up against that. And at the lead of that, for the most part of the story, was Roman as the head of the table, as the tribal chief. He gets a 5. Last but not least in this category, Jon Moxley. We're giving Jon a 3. And the reason I say that is, anytime that Moxley or Ambrose has been a heel, I don't think the fans have really bought him as the main heel. They want to cheer him. Moxley's a guy, yes, he has his fans and he has his detractors, but for the people that are fans of him, no matter how heelish he is, they want to cheer him. So for that, I don't think he makes a great heel. He gets a 3. Now next up, how they perform as a face. We're going to start again with Seth Rollins. Seth is going to get a 3. I like Seth Rollins. I do think he works better as a heel. I do think a lot of what I like about him is more his heel side of the character, when he is being snarky, when he is being a jerk. As a face, he does come off a little bit over the top for me. That's why he is basically only a 3. Next up, Roman Reigns, same thing. For years, they tried to push Roman down our throats as a babyface, and he's just recently returned at the time I'm recording this at SummerSlam. As a babyface, it's only about a week old, but his previous run is what we're grading on. I'm giving him a 3. A lot of it is the way he was written and the way he was booked, but up until this point, I never believed in him as being a top-tier face of the company guy until he turned heel with the Bloodline. Last but not least, Jon Moxley. I just talked about it here. Moxley is a lot like Roddy Piper, where it's almost impossible at this point to make him a heel. He could cheat as much as he wants and people will still cheer for him. For that, and for the fact that he's basically been the ace of AEW since its start, I'm giving Moxley a 5. Next up, we have promos. For Seth, we're going to give Seth a 4. Like I said, I like a lot of what he does. He does have times where he gets grating on the mic, where he gets annoying, and a lot of that is just his voice, and sadly, he can't do anything about that. He tends to come off sounding like Grover from the Muppets at times, and he's not bad. Like I said, 4 is a very good score. I just think there's times he comes off grating. Next up, Roman Reigns. He's going to get a 4 as well. If we're just talking about the Bloodline era of Roman, he would have got a 5. But if we add in the Suffer and Succotash era, he gets knocked down a little bit. The Bloodline era is what brings us to a 5. If he didn't have that, he'd probably be a 2. But since the Bloodline time, it has been a vast improvement. I would consider him one of the best promos in all of wrestling. If we do this again in 5 years, he might move all the way up to a 5. Last but not least, Jon Moxley. Mox is getting a 4 as well. Again, it's not his strong suit, and I do think he's had some really good promos, but I also think there have been some weird ones. Again, some of it had to deal with the WWE booking, specifically his germaphobe run, and other little goofy things, other little idiosyncrasies that I think don't make it perfect, which is why he gets it. Next up, we're going with presentation. Basically, this is their ring gear, their music, everything about that. Starting off with Seth Rollins, we're giving Seth a 4. I love his music. I love the fact that the crowd sings along. I like a lot of his gear. However, we're looking at it as an overall. And at times, it kind of felt like he was just another guy with the way he was presented. Whether it be when he was tied in with the Authority or the Monday Night Messiah runs, I think there was a little bit to be lacking. Next up, Roman Reigns. Roman's also getting a 4 because basically I'm going to give him a little bit off. Again, if we talk about just the Bloodline era, he's a 5. But if we talk about prior to that, everything about him was just the Shield. He relied most on keeping the music from the Shield, keeping the look of the Shield, most of the time his gear up until this Bloodline run. And even in the Bloodline, it's very reminiscent of the Shield, but it was basically the same presentation that he didn't involve. So again, I'm getting him a 4. I think it's really good, and a lot of that is the presentation with the Bloodline. The Ula Fala, having Paul Heyman there, that all made him so much better. Last but not least, we're going with Jon Moxley. Mox is getting a 5, and the reason why he gets a 5 is both of his themes, the WWE theme and Wild Thing and the previous theme that he had in AEW, are all fantastic songs. The way that he walks to the ring, the way that he has the throwback, and I know I just gave it the merit to Roman for the Shield entrance, but with Mox using it and having it as a throwback and everything about that, the way he's presented, out of the 3 of these guys, Jon Moxley's presentation feels the most like it's the actual Jon Moxley. It feels like it's Jonathan Good, whereas Colby Lopez or Joe Ananoai, which I probably pronounced that last name wrong, they don't feel as organic as Moxley's presentation. And he also gets another little bit of a plus because basically New Japan Pro Wrestling has taken a lot of that and gave his former pupil, Shota Umino, a lot of it. He has a Death Rider. He was carrying Jon Moxley's jacket. He comes through the crowd. There was a lot of Jon Moxley's presentation that was used to get this guy, which they think of as a future ace of the company, to help him get over. So yeah, there is a lot to that. Again, I'm giving Mox a 5. Next up is charisma. This one is easy. All 3 of these guys have charisma coming out of their ass. They're 3 of the best wrestlers of the last decade or so. They're all 3 going to be first ballot Hall of Famers. If we talk about a top 20, 25 wrestlers in wrestling, the 3 of them are all going to make that list. So all 3 of them get a 5 here. They all have amazing charisma. It shines through. That's why the fans love all three of these guys. And our last but not least category is big game wrestling. And what this means is this is your WrestleMania main event, your Double or Nothing main events, if you're Jon Moxley, or All In main events, or just highlighting a pay-per-view, or being the face of the company. For all three of these guys, all three have been put to the top of their roles, and all three of them have main evented some of the biggest shows in wrestling history, some of the most important shows in the last 10 years. I'm giving all three of them, again, a 5. They all three get it across the board. I think this is where they really excel, because on the biggest stages, these three guys produce. Even when Roman was in the era where everybody hated him for the gimmick, you could not hate his matches, because his matches were always top notch. Now, with all that being said, we're going to tally everything up, give a final score here, starting off with Seth. Seth Rollins gets 34 altogether, a very high score, as you can see. Like I said, these are three all-time wrestlers. He definitely deserves that. Next up, we get Roman Reigns. He totals up as 34 as well. And you may be saying to yourself, the last two, or the only two other videos at this point I've done like this, we've had a tie. Well, we got a tie here. However, it's not a tie for number one. So we don't have to go to a tiebreaker on this one, because last but not least, Jon Moxley, aka Dean Ambrose, gets a 35. He just barely nudges out his Shield brethren. And I know there's a lot of people that don't like Moxley. I love him. I think he's a great wrestler, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of Jon Moxley. I think he's one of the best in the world. As you can see here, I think historically, he's an all-time great. I mean, the top score you could get is a 40. And I think on my other ones, this is about what the top score has been. I don't remember off the top of my head what the scores I gave for my other people were, but this was right on there, right about what they got. So with that being said, this is my final score. Let me know what you think. Who do you think the best of the three is? Let me know down here in the comments. I do have an idea, and I'm sorry that I forget who mentioned it, but they mentioned it on my last one. I already had an idea for this grouping, but my next Who is Better is going to be Who Was Better, because it's two now retired wrestlers. And the hint I'm going to give you for that is one was a dead man, and the other was a surfer. So you can probably guess at who those two guys are. With that explanation, we're going to go back to just two for that one. As you'll see, these are all going to have a theme to them, whether it be members of the Shield. Last one was the OVW class of 2002. Before that, it was Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. The next one are obviously two guys that were compared to each other over their careers. So yeah, that's what we're going to do next. When I do that video, I'm going to give a shout out to the person that mentioned it, because I just didn't write it down for this one. But anyway, I digress. Like I said, let me know who you think was the best. Hit me up down here in the comments. Smash the like button, share the video, subscribe, all that fun stuff. My name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Who is Better.